My name is Saran Rashal Ulu binti Muhammad Zahrir, and my metric number is 060175. So now I will be doing a presentation on the crimes against humanity. So for the origin of crimes against humanity, so the term crimes against humanity was first used internationally in a 1915 declaration by the governments of Great Britain, France, and Russia condemning the Turkish government for the alleged massacres of Armenians as crimes against civilization and humanity, for which all the members of the Turkish government will be held responsible together with its agents implicated in the massacres. So what is it? What is crimes against humanity? So a violation of international criminal law known as crimes against humanity was included in the Nuremberg Charter, which was used to prosecute surviving Nazi officials in 1945 and was later added into the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in 1998. Murder, extermination, enslavement, torture, forcible population transfer, incarceration, rape, persecution, enforced disappearance, and apartheid are among the acts that the ICC defines as crimes against humanity when they are committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population. And the phrase, which is frequently used, shock the conscience of mankind, can also be used to condemn other actions. So to continue, the concept of crimes against humanity encapsulates the idea that individuals who either establish or obey state policy can be held responsible by the international community, whether it can be as legal infraction or as a moral category. Thus, it alters conventional ideas of sovereignty that gave immunity to state officials and those who followed them. So, there are numerous ways that political and legal philosophers have defended that assault on the concept of sovereignty. Some people consider an act of extremely heinous inhumanity to be the crime against humanity. Others believe that significant atrocities have the potential to undermine world peace because they either herald external aggression or have consequences that cross national boundaries. So, for crimes against humanity, again, critics have used the phrase crimes against humanity to describe a wide range of diverse human rights violations, including terrorist attacks, integration policies, and the destruction of the social safety net. So, although nations have used it less frequently, there is still some destruction of the social safety net. It sometimes seems like the phrase could be utilized to characterize anything that makes us angry. Part of the problem is that the definition of crimes against humanity in Article 7 of the ICC statute, the statutes of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, ICTY, and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, are vague concepts that can be applied in a variety of ways and to a variety of situations. For instance, international law leaves much to be desired regarding the definitions of terms like widespread or systematic attack directed at any civilian population and state or organizational policy to commit such attack. Although the ad hoc tribunals have made significant strides in defining the principles that underpin the meaning of the crime, Their declarations are made in the context of their own statutory definitions and factual circumstances and are only a small portion of the larger body of source information from which the law should be derived. So the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, Article 7, for the purpose of this statute, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack, which are number one, murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation or forcible transfer of population, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law, torture, rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, and forced sterilization or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity. Number 8, persecution against any identifiable group or collectivity on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender as defined in paragraph 3 or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law in connection with any act referred to in this paragraph or any crime within the jurisdiction of the court. Next, enforced disappearance of persons, the crime of apartheid. And the last one is other inhuman acts of a similar character internationally or intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health. So I am quoting from the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, Article 7. So what I have mentioned is from there. So next, the elements of the crime. So number 1 is a physical element, which includes the commission of any of the following acts, such as murder, torture, persecution, and other inhuman acts. Next, a contextual element when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population. And the last one will be a mental element with the knowledge of the attack. So for the mental element with the knowledge of the attack correlated with the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court for Article 7. So a mental element, this context determines whether crimes against humanity involve deliberate violence, large-scale violence measured by the number of victims, or violence that extends across a significant geographic area. Violence that is arbitrary, unintentional, or isolated is not included. And in addition, crimes against humanity must be committed in furtherance of a state or organizational policy to launch an assault, according to Article 7, Clause 2, Clause A of the Rome Statute. The plan or policy can therefore be deduced from the totality of the circumstances without having to be specifically stated or legally accepted. So crimes against humanity, as opposed to genocide, do not have to target a particular group. Instead, any civilian population, regardless of any affiliation or identification, could be the target of the attack. Another significant distinction is that it is not essential to demonstrate a specific intent in the case of crimes against humanity. So with the exception of the act of persecution, which requires extra discriminatory intent, any of the aforementioned acts may be committed with just a simple intent. The offender must also have knowledge of the attack against the civilian population and understand that his or her behavior is a component of that attack before acting. So the UN Security Council established the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia (ICTY) in 1993 to investigate and prosecute cases of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed in the former Yugoslavia. The interpretation of crimes against humanity used by the ICTY resurrected the original Nuremberg correlation with armed conflict, connecting crimes against humanity to both international and non-international armed conflict. In addition to broadening the list of crimes used in Nuremberg to include imprisonment, torture, and rape. So for the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda (ICTR), in response to the genocide that had occurred between April and July 1994, the UN Security Council established the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda (ICTR) in 1994. The ICTR statute removed the connection between crimes against humanity and any sort of armed conflict. As stated in Article 3 of the ICTR statute, was instead added that the cruel crimes must be a part of a systematic or widespread onslaught against any civilian population or on national, political, ethnic, racial, or religious grounds. So I am also quoting this from the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda (ICTR). And to add more, if the connection to armed conflict had been preserved, crimes against humanity would probably not have been applicable due to the internal nature of the struggle in Rwanda. Next, for the differences between war crimes and crimes against humanity, specifically during times of war, whether they be civil wars or interstate conflicts, war crimes are perpetrated. Usually they take place when established protocols established by international accords are violated. On the other side, crimes against humanity are those that violate human dignity and degrade or humiliate people. War crimes can involve things like arbitrary deportations, torturing, destruction of private property, and summary executions. When carried out during times of conflict, these actions are considered war crimes under Article 147 of the Geneva Convention. Crimes against humanity frequently involve the willful prosecution of citizens based on their racial, ethnic, political, cultural, or religious affiliations. They frequently involve sexual brutality, mass murder, incarceration, and enslavement and are carried out by government agents. So why crimes against humanity should be punished? Number one is for the accountability. So it is predicated on the relational idea of accountability. Being accountable for anything entails taking responsibility for it. Even in domestic law, such laws are seen as public, and as a result, the individual who committed the offense must be held accountable and punished. So basically, you need to face the consequences of your actions. Number two will be the breach of moral obligation. We all have a moral responsibility to refrain from violating other people's rights or doing them damage, even in the absence of a governmental or societal framework that forbids such actions. This commitment nevertheless applies. So possessing good moral will refrain you from violating other people's rights and doing them damage. So for the case, so one of the cases that involves the crimes against humanity is the case of the prosecutor against Ali Muhammad Ali Abdul Rahman. So, according to allegations, Ali Muhammad Ali Abdul Rahman was one of the malicious Janjaweed's leader during the time frame in question in the Sudan scenario. In cities like Kudum, Bindisi, Mukjar, and the surrounding territories, which the office of the prosecutor claims were free of rebel activity at the time, the Sudanese armed forces, militias, and the Janjaweed allegedly attacked people in 2003 and 2004. According to reports, the Sudanese armed forces, militias, and Janjaweed frequently targeted Mosul inhabitants in their attacks, which typically included rape, sexual assault, murder, and damage of civilian belongings. According to reports, Mr. Abdul Rahman himself took part in some of these assaults. Mr. Abdul Rahman voluntarily turned himself into the ICC in the Central African Republic in June 2020. So for the conclusion, the Nuremberg Charter was used as a compass to guide the laws regarding this matter. Following this, various laws were passed to punish the perpetrators, including the Genocide Convention and the UN resolution. But we still need a thorough and real framework that can both punish offenders and compensate victims. Both human rights violations and awareness of them have grown. The moment has come for the international community to bolster legal protections and uphold the dignity of people and their rights. So that is all from me. Thank you very much for listening.